The air inside the courtroom is suffocating, not because of heat, but because of the unspoken weight pressing down on everyone in attendance. Polished oak benches stretch back in neat rows, filled with curious onlookers, rival businessmen, and reporters eager to capture the downfall of yet another once powerful family. Lina Carter sits rigidly in the second-to-last row, her knuckles white as her hands remain clenched tightly in her lap. She keeps her chin lifted, but her eyes betray the storm she's fighting to contain. On the stand, her father, once a titan of industry, a man who carried himself with authority and charisma, now appears diminished. His shoulders slouched under the gravity of financial ruin and humiliation. Papers are shuffled, questions are asked, and the gavel's sharp echo slices through the silence like a blade. But for Lina, the only figure that matters in this room is Ethan Hayes. He sits tall and composed, his tailored suit immaculate, his expression unreadable as he delivers precise arguments that dismantle her father's reputation piece by piece. Each word from his lips feels less like a legal fact and more like a personal dagger, aimed directly at her family's heart. To the crowd, it is a legal proceeding. To Lina, it feels like an execution, and Ethan is the executioner. Lina's chest tightens as she watches Ethan move with surgical precision, stripping away her father's credibility, financial stability, and the empire he built over decades. The Carter name, once spoken with respect in every corner of the business world, is being dragged through the mud with the calm efficiency of a man who seems to have planned every step in advance. Whispers ripple through the courtroom, reporters scribbling furiously as if they can already taste tomorrow's headlines. Carter dynasty crumbles. But Lina doesn't just see this as business, it feels personal. An attack designed to ruin not just her father's company, but her family's entire legacy, and the rumors only fuel her rage. She has heard them whispered at charity galas, over champagne flutes and hushed tones, that Ethan Hayes wasn't simply representing his client, but had maneuvered events behind the scenes to push her father's business into collapse. The thought churns in her stomach like poison. This wasn't justice. It wasn't fairness. It was strategy, cruelty disguised as professionalism. For a moment, her gaze locks with his, and while he remains expressionless, Lina feels as if he knows exactly how much pain he's inflicting in, that he relishes it. It is in that silent, charged moment that her heartbreak hardens into something sharper. Not sadness, not despair, but fury. The trial continues around her, voices rising and falling in legal jargon. But Lina hears none of it. All she can hear is the roar of her own pulse in her ears, the echo of her father's sighs of defeat, and the cold clarity of her own thoughts. Ethan Hayes has taken everything from her family's company, her father's dignity, the security that had once been her inheritance. And for what? Leverage, power, to prove that he could. A slow fire burns through her, hotter with every breath she takes, as the gavel slams once more, sealing the Carter family's ruin. Lina leans forward slightly, her lips barely moving as she whispers into the silence. Only she can hear, "He'll pay for this. I'll make sure of it." The words taste like iron and truth, an oath forged from humiliation and fury. This is not a passing wave of anger, not a fleeting spark that will fade once the wound scabs over. No, this is the birth of her new purpose. In that courtroom, surrounded by strangers, under the watchful eye of her enemy, Lina Carter makes a vow. She will not forgive, and she will not forget. Her life from this day forward will have one mission of revenge. Ethan Hayes may believe he has won today, but Lina knows with chilling certainty that the battle is only beginning. Lena Carter had not always carried the weight of bitterness on her shoulders. Just a few years earlier, she was the kind of woman people described as unstoppable. A recent business school graduate with a sharp mind, endless ambition, and a vision to launch a tech startup that she believed would disrupt entire markets. Professors admired her drive, peers envied her poise, and her father, Richard Carter, once beamed with pride whenever her name was mentioned. The Carter family wasn't just wealthy, they were influential, part of an elite world where their company's name carried gravitas. Lena's path seemed golden, paved with opportunity and legacy. But when her father's empire collapsed in a wave of scandal, bankruptcy, and whispered betrayals, Lena's world imploded. Overnight, she went from the rising star of the Carter family to the daughter of a fallen tycoon. Invitations stopped arriving. Former friends distanced themselves. Investors who once lined up to hear her ideas now ghosted her, fearing association with disgrace. Shame clung to her like a second skin, one she could never quite scrub away. She abandoned her startup dreams, trading innovation for survival, and learned quickly that the world was merciless toward the children of the ruin. Instead of being seen as her own woman, Lena became a shadow of her father's mistakes. Shadow she swore one day to erase. If Lena's name had become synonymous with disgrace, Ethan Hayes' name had become the definition of power. Within corporate law, his reputation was almost mythic. The man who never lost, the man who could dismantle billion-dollar corporations with the stroke of a pen, and the sharp precision of his words in courts. Colleagues respected him, but few dared to trust him. Rivals feared him, knowing that once Ethan set his sights on an opponent, their downfall was inevitable. Social circles whispered about him with a mix of fascination and unease. Women admired his chiseled confidence, the way he carried himself like the world bent to his will, but his arrogance was so sharp it cut away any real intimacy. Relationships, if they existed at all, were transactional, fleeting moments where charm disguised cruelty. His brilliance was undeniable, but so was his reputation for coldness. Rumors painted him as a man who thrived on destruction, not for the sake of justice, but for the intoxicating thrill of victory. To Lena, Ethan wasn't just another ruthless attorney. He was the architect of her family's ruin, the man who had smiled, calm and indifferent, as he reduced her father's empire to ashes. Where others saw brilliance, she saw a predator who needed to be stopped. He wasn't untouchable. She refused to believe that. And if no one else dared to confront him, she would. That belief became the foundation of her plan. Lena forced her way back into the legal world, clawing for an opportunity until she secured a position at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. The very firm where Ethan Hayes was not just a senior partner, but a legend. To the outside world, her acceptance was a mark of resilience, a symbol that perhaps the Carter disgrace had not completely ruined her. But Lena knew the truth. This wasn't about redemption. This was infiltration. Every day she walked through those sleek glass doors, she reminded herself that she was stepping into enemy territory, and that was exactly where she wanted to be. Her goal wasn't immediate revenge. Ethan was too careful, too insulated, but to study him, get close, find cracks in his armor, and destroy him from within. Yet the stakes grew heavier with every interaction. Each casual smile from him felt like mockery, as though he knew the Carter daughter was reduced to working under his roof. Each dismissive nod, each commanding tone in meetings was a reminder of what she had lost. The closer she got to him, the more she risked not only exposure, but also her own control, because hatred this deep is intoxicating, and proximity to the man she despised threatened to blur the lines between vengeance and obsession. Failure meant humiliation. A second, public downfall. Success meant reclaiming her family's honor. And in Lena's mind, there was no middle ground. The corporate gala glitters with crystal glasses, and the careful choreography of wealth and influence. Lena moves through the room like a ghost cloaked in elegance, every step calculated. Her father's fall is still a scar whispered about in hushed tones among this crowd, but tonight she refuses to be the girl marked by disgrace. Tonight, she is composed, deliberate, and armed with the fire of revenge. Across the room, she spots him, Ethan Hayes, impossibly polished in a tailored black suit, surrounded by power players who hang on his every word. He looks untouchable, the same as he did in court, as though nothing could break through his armor. But Lena doesn't hesitate. She crosses the floor and cuts into his circle with a smile so sharp it could wound. Their eyes meet, and for a moment the noise of the gala fades. Her words drip with venom cloaked in politeness. Comments about his brilliant talent for destroying legacies, his skill at ruining lives with such charm. His responses are not defensive. Ethan smirks, eyes glinting with an amusement that borders on dangerous. He leans in just enough to lower his voice, replying with remarks that sting yet feel like a challenge. "You speak as though I've wronged you personally, Ms. Carter. Should I be flattered? You've memorized my resume." To Lena, his indifference is infuriating. But what unsettles her more is that he doesn't dismiss her. He studies her, intrigued by her fire, as though her hatred entertains him rather than deters him. For the first time since her father's downfall, she feels seen not as a casualty, but as a player stepping onto the field. The next morning, Lena's resolve sharpens when her name is called in the firm's glass-walled conference room. She had anticipated long hours of grunt work, invisible and unnoticed, building her strategy in silence. But instead, Ethan himself announces she will join his team on a massive, high-stakes corporate litigation case. The decision stuns the room, whispers flickering among associates who envy her sudden elevation. For Lena, it is a twist she hadn't dared to hope for. The chance to infiltrate his inner circle, to watch his every move from the closest seat possible. Every detail of his process, every flaw in his judgment, every secret he keeps, she will have access to it all. On the surface, she maintains a professional calm, nodding respectfully while pretending gratitude. Inside, her pulse races with dark exhilaration. Yet Ethan's gaze lingers on her as he assigns her role, an almost imperceptible curve tugging at the corner of his lips. He isn't simply choosing her for her skills. This is a move of curiosity. Where she sees the perfect opportunity for vengeance, he sees something far more dangerous. An adversary who doesn't cower. A woman whose defiance sparks a thrill he hadn't realized he craved. His smirk, subtle but unmistakable, tells her he knows this assignment will test her. And Lena knows with cold certainty that she must play the role flawlessly. To destroy Ethan Hayes, she must first become indispensable to him. Alone later that night, Lena sits by her apartment window, city lights glittering like fragments of temptation. The gala replay loops in her mind, the way Ethan's gaze lingered, not mocking, but curious, as though she were a puzzle worth solving. She should feel victorious. She has won the golden ticket, a front row seat to the man she despises. Yet the memory unsettles her, his smirk gnawing at her certainty. He does not fear her, and worse, he seems entertained by her resistance. But that only hardens her resolve. Rage alone will not bring Ethan down. Is weakness. She must be patient, clever, A strategist like him, if he wants to see her fire, she will show him sparks while hiding the inferno beneath. She vows to play the long game, to shadow him, learn his secrets, earn his trust, and then, when he least expects it, drive the blade deep where it will hurt most: his career, his reputation, his untouchable facade. The idea doesn't just feel like revenge. It feels like destiny. She whispers the promise to herself like a mantra: I'll bring him down, no matter how long it takes. Yet as the words leave her lips, an unease curls in her chest, unspoken but undeniable. Because hatred has a dangerous twin chemistry, and, if she isn't careful, the fire she nurtures could consume her before it ever destroys. Ethan Hayes. Working side by side with Ethan Hayes is nothing like Lena imagined. She had pictured him as an unshakable fortress gold, flawless, armored in arrogance, but proximity reveals details that outsiders never see. Late nights in the glass-walled offices show him hunched over briefs until dawn, his tie loosened, his voice hoarse from hours of argument rehearsals. Lena catches glimpses of exhaustion etched at the corners of his eyes, of hands trembling slightly as he reaches for yet another cup of black coffee. In rare, unguarded moments, she overhears fragments of phone calls with his mother's strained conversations, filled with clipped words and silences so heavy they echo. He never mentions family in public, but Lena begins piecing together a portrait of wounds hidden beneath his commanding persona. These cracks disorient her. She wants to hold on to her hatred, but the humanity behind his arrogance unsettles her resolve. He is ruthless, yes, but he is also lonely. And loneliness, Lena knows, is its own kind of prison. Against her will, she begins noticing more. The way his gaze lingers on empty chairs after meetings, the subtle tightening of his jaw when colleagues toast their perfect families. Hatred was supposed to make him simple, but proximity makes him complicated, and complication is dangerous. Lena tells herself she still despises him, but her emotions betray her. When Ethan unexpectedly drops his guard, sharing a self-deprecating joke at his own expense, or asking her opinion with genuine interest, something twists inside her chest. The predator she built in her mind does not match the man before her, and the contradiction gnaws at her resolve. Yet the world around them notices their closeness. Whispered gossip trickles through the firm's corridors, sharp and venomous. She's just using her name to get near him. Hayes finally found the scrutiny is suffocating, especially when her father's warning echoes in her memory like a brand. Don't forget who he is. Don't forget what he did. Every time she feels a flicker of warmth toward Ethan, guilt sears her like fire. She replays the courtroom scene, the humiliation, her father's collapse. She reminds herself that her proximity has a purpose: betrayal. Yet her heart wages war against her mission. Late at night, she finds herself staring at her reflection, whispering the vow she made, only to hear doubt whisper back. What if he's not the monster you believed? It is this war between purpose and attraction, vengeance and empathy, that leaves Lena walking a knife's edge, uncertain whether she will cut him or herself. The collision of her mission and her emotions reaches its breaking point in a brutal boardroom meeting. Senior partners, threatened by Lena's rapid rise under Ethan's wing, seize an opportunity to undermine her. They dismiss her research, mock her in front of clients, and insinuate she earned her position through manipulation rather than skill. Lena feels the sting of humiliation she thought she had left behind, with her family's downfall, her father's disgrace replaying in cruel echoes. Before she can respond, Ethan intervenes. His voice slices through the hostility with commanding authority, silencing the room. He dismantles their attacks point by point, using the same ruthless eloquence he once destroyed her father with. But this time, he wields it for her. The room falls quiet, her tormentors shrinking back under his glare. Lena sits frozen, her heart pounding not with rage, but with something she swore she'd never feel toward him. Gratitude. Gratitude, and something softer, something perilously close to trust. As she gathers her notes with trembling hands, Ethan leans toward her, voice low enough for only her to hear. You don't need to fight alone. Not here. The words shake her foundation. Because if gratitude is the first crack in the wall she built around her hatred, then trust could be the flood that brings it crashing down. And in that moment, Lena realizes the most dangerous threat to her mission is no longer Ethan's power, it is her own heart. Late at night, long after the office has emptied, Lena stumbles upon the evidence that shatters the narrative she has clung to for years. Buried deep within archived files, she uncovers internal memos, financial reports, and email. Threads each line? A brutal revelation. Her father's empire was already crumbling long before Ethan Hayes entered the courtroom. Reckless investments, hidden debts, and desperate cover-ups. Tell a story Lena never wanted to believe. Her father had not been a flawless victim. He had been careless, gambling with everything he built. Ethan hadn't created the cracks, he had simply driven the final wedge through them. It is a truth that feels like betrayal in itself, not from Ethan, but from her father, the man who raised her on stories of integrity and honor. Her chest tightens as reality sinks in. Ethan wasn't the monster she painted him to be, but the executioner of a downfall her father orchestrated himself. Rage and grief tangle inside her. For years, she fueled her every step with the fire of revenge, sculpting Ethan into her enemy. Now, with the truth blazing before her, she feels stripped bare, her hatred suddenly without anchor, her purpose trembling under the weight of reality. The ground she has stood on has vanished, and all that remains is a terrifying void. She storms into his office, documents clutched in trembling hands, fury and heartbreak warring across her face. You ruined my family, she spits, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Ethan rises slowly from his chair, his expression unreadable, though his eyes flicker with a storm of their own. Don't twist this, Lena. He fires back, his tone low and edged. Your father was already drowning. I didn't push him, I just didn't save him. And you've known it all along, haven't you? Her throat tightens. I devoted my life to destroying you, she chokes out. But Ethan interrupts, his voice dropping to a raw confession. I know. I've known since the beginning. Every glare, every word, it wasn't subtle. You think I couldn't see it? The air between them thickens with rage, betrayal, and something deeper neither can name. Their masks crack, revealing the raw wounds beneath his loneliness, her shame, their shared destruction. For a moment, they stand facing each other like adversaries in battle, each breath laced with accusation and longing. Their anger is real, but beneath it lies something even more dangerous. The recognition of themselves in each other. The tension snaps, not with violence, but with something far more reckless. In the middle of their fury, words give way to silence, and silence gives way to a desperate pull neither of them can control. Ethan steps forward. Lena doesn't retreat, and their mouths crash together in a kiss that is fierce, unyielding, and searing with every ounce of the pain they've carried. It is not tender, it is a collision of grief and desire, hatred and need. Two broken people trying to burn away the truth with the heat of each other. Lena's fists pound against his chest even as her lips press harder against his. Ethan grips her, as if letting go would destroy them both. For a heartbeat, It feels like drowning and breathing all at once, their hatred igniting into something raw, primal, and terrifyingly real. When they finally break apart, gasping, the room feels charged with electricity, the weight of betrayal and confession still hanging heavy. But beneath it all, something undeniable has shifted. Love and hate. Two sides of the same blade have collided, leaving them both cut open and exposed. And in that shattering moment, Lena realizes the cruelest twist of all. The man she swore to destroy may be the only one who truly sees her. In the quiet days following the storm, Lena begins the most painful work of all, not facing Ethan, but facing the truth about her father. For years, she carried his reputation like a badge and a burden, convincing herself that the Carter name was synonymous with strength, honor, and legacy. But the documents she uncovered, the reckless choices laid bare, force her to see him not as the untouchable giant she idolized, but as a man undone by his own pride. He refused to listen to advisors, doubled down when caution was urged, and gambled everything in a desperate bid to remain untouchable. His downfall was not Ethan's design, it was his own. Lena grieves this revelation deeply, mourning not just the father she lost, but the illusions she built around him. Yet in that grief lies freedom. She no longer needs to wear his shame like chains, nor prove herself by avenging his mistakes. For the first time, Lena feels the stirrings of her own identity, unshackled and defined not by legacy, but by choice. It is terrifying, this independence, but also empowering. She whispers to herself one night, "I am not his shadow, I am my own." And for the first time, she believes it. Parallel to Lena's reckoning, Ethan undergoes his own unraveling. The man who once thrived on victory at all costs finally confronts the emptiness beneath his success. In late-night conversations with Lena, he admits truths he has buried for years, that his obsession with winning, his ruthless persona, came from a gnawing fear of inadequacy. A childhood marked by absence and a mother's disappointment carved into him the belief that love and acceptance were conditional, earned only through dominance and perfection. Power became his armor, victory his currency. But with Lena, the armor begins to feel suffocating. She doesn't admire him for his wins, she challenges him in ways that strip him bare. And though it terrifies him, Ethan feels something he never thought possible. The desire to be more than feared, more than untouchable. For the first time, he envisions a life not measured in billable hours or courtroom triumphs, but in connection, vulnerability, and the terrifying possibility of love. His confession is raw, almost broken, but in laying himself open, Ethan begins to shed the chains of his own making. Through Lena's defiance, he discovers the freedom to be human. The path ahead narrows to a single, unbearable choice. Lena sits with a question that has haunted her from the beginning. What remains of her vow for revenge? The answer is clear. Her hatred has already crumbled under the weight of truth. Her mission unraveled the moment she saw Ethan not as a monster, but as a man. Yet clarity brings fear. To love him would be the greatest betrayal of her past self. The self who whispered in a courtroom that she would make him pay. Can she trust herself to step into something so fragile after years of building walls of steel? Can she risk the possibility that Ethan could wound her again? Not with legal arguments, but with his heart. Ethan waits for her answer without pressure. His usual arrogance replaced by Pacienza, silent offering of choice. For once, he does not demand or strategize. He simply stands before her, vulnerable. And in that stillness, Lena realizes that power is no longer the battlefield. Choice is. She can choose to remain imprisoned by revenge, or she can choose to step forward into something uncertain but alive. With trembling breath, she admits the truth to herself. Love and destruction were never opposites. They were always intertwined. The question is not whether she can forgive him, it is whether she can forgive herself enough to begin again. Months later, Lena sits at a desk that is entirely her own, not in her father's boardroom, not under Ethan's firm's gleaming logo, but in the modest office of her new consulting firm. The walls are bare, except for sketches of her business model. Her desk scattered with notes and proposals, all infused with her vision. It is not glamorous. The furniture is secondhand, the logo still being finalized. But for Lena, it is perfect. This is hers, built not on legacy, revenge, or borrowed power, but on her own terms. Ethan's presence is here too, though not in the suffocating way she once feared. His investment sits quietly in the background, not as a chain to bind her, but as a hand extended in support. He has no seat at her table, no control over her decisions. He believed in her enough to back her, and then he stepped aside. The gesture is radical in its simplicity. Trust. For Lena, it symbolizes everything her life has become: a shedding of shame, a reclamation of self. As she walks through the small office, running her fingers over the smooth edge of her desk, she feels lighter than she has in years. She has found not just survival, but freedom. That night, when the last of her employees leave and silence fills the space, Lena opens a drawer and pulls out a worn leather-bound journal. The cover is scuffed, the pages filled with her most bitter handwriting, outlines of schemes, venomous notes, and step-by-step blueprints of how she once dreamed of destroying Ethan Hayes. This journal has been her constant companion, her secret confidant in the darkest moments of rage. But as she flips through it now, the words feel foreign, like the remnants of a stranger's life. She lingers on one page, where she had written years earlier, "He'll pay for this. I'll make sure of it." A faint smile curves her lips, not of satisfaction, but of release. Slowly, deliberately, she closes the journal, places it into a plain wooden box, and locks it shut. There is no ceremony, no fire, no dramatic destruction, just a quiet burial, a symbolic surrender of the chains she once clung to. Revenge had defined her, but it no longer owns her. By locking the journal away, Lena chooses not to erase her past, but to honor it and then set it aside. It is not forgiveness. It is something harder, and perhaps braver: letting go. Later that evening, the sound of footsteps breaks her solitude. Ethan appears at the doorway, dressed not in the armor of his sharp suits, but in something softer, more ordinary. For once, there is no arrogance in his stance, no mask of superiority, just a man carrying the weight of his choices, but lighter now, because she has seen him as he truly is. He doesn't speak immediately, only offers her the faintest of smiles as he steps into the room. The moment stretches between them, fragile yet steady. Lena exhales, her voice barely above a whisper, half confession, half surrender. "I hated you until I couldn't anymore." The words hang in the air, tender and raw, not an admission of weakness, but of truth. Ethan doesn't respond with a speech, nor with clever retorts, only with a quiet gesture, reaching out and taking her hand. His touch is steady, grounding, a silent promise that no more masks stand between them. The office, with its scattered papers and glowing desk lamp, becomes their world. No grand gestures, No fireworks just to people who once defined themselves by destruction, now finding peace in something simpler. The screen fades as their hands remain clasped. The future unwritten, but finally, there's two shape.